In today's video, we will be comparing and contrasting two different viewpoints on the future of China. First up, Billionaire Hedge Fund Manager Dalio makes the case that China is on the rise and will overtake the United States as a world power in the coming decades. On the other hand, geopolitical strategist Ziehan argues that China's authoritative regime is catching up to them and leading the country to the brink of economic collapse. Let us know in the comments who you think is right.
It is inevitable that for the foreseeable future, that China will be a comparable power, let's call it. Stronger in some ways, less strong in other ways, and that it is likely that it will pass the United States, but not certain. It'll all depend on how strong the United States is by taking care of itself. But anyway, to give you numbers, you asked for that. China has a population which is more than 4 times the size of the United States. So if it had a per capita income, which was half the United States, it would be twice as large economically. And it's been growing at a fast pace. Since 1984, its per capita income has increased by 26 times.
Wow.
Okay, so it is growing, and they have maybe more potential to grow. So we know that we can't discount China, and we know that we're in a different world than in the early years of me growing up, when the United States was the dominant power. So we know that we're going to have that great power conflict. And so we either better get stronger or expect that we have to deal with that power conflict, ideally in a way that does not produce a military war. China has problems that you're referring to. For example, the demographics, particularly with the one-child policy, meant that it used to be that there were kids taking care of the parents.
Sure.
But now we have one child, 2 parents,
right?
And at the same time as you're taking care of your children, and that's more than is possible. So the demographic issue is an important issue in China. And so it has a number of challenges, but we also have a number of challenges. And in any case, it's likely that they will grow at a faster pace than we will grow at, despite those challenges, because they are being very productive.
Then we got China. Now you see right here are the American millennials. You see that China kind of has that one spike that looks promising. Remember, their population is roughly 4 times the size of ours, so that one spike really matters, if it exists. The Chinese have been updating their data in the last couple of years. They still haven't released their 2020 census because they couldn't believe what came back. They're now starting to believe it. And they now think that they overcounted their population by in excess of 100 million people, all of whom were born since the one-child policy was adopted 40 years ago, suggesting that those yellow bars don't exist at all. If this is true, China is the fastest aging society in human history. That means from a demographic point of view, the Chinese economic model cannot survive the decade. And it strongly suggests that as soon as 2050, the Chinese may have lost 600 million people. I don't worry about China at all. Okay, labor costs, here are Southeast Asian countries, which I'm broadly positive on. Decent geography, good demographies. Here are our Mexican neighbors, very competitive right in the middle, and there are the Chinese. China is no longer the low-cost producer of anything. It's only the pre-existing sunk cost of the industrial plant, which is why we build things there still. Anyone who is relocated from China to North America has discovered lower production costs. Now, I realize you don't move that industrial plant overnight, but if it's gonna die anyway, sooner rather than later. 3 big things. First of all, Chairman Xi has created a cult of personality that is so extreme, and he has shot the messenger literally so many times that no one wants to bring him any information. No one even wants to approach Chairman Xi because they have no idea what's going on in his head and how whatever fact they give him is gonna play to the chorus. He has consolidated more power to himself than any leader in world history. More than Mao, more than the Chinese emperors of old, more than the Kim dynasty in North Korea, more than Donald Trump, more than anyone. And as a result, we're seeing policy collapses across the entire system. The two most dramatic, we had power outages that started last March. It's apparent that Xi didn't know they happened until September. We didn't get a policy to deal with it until November, and they're only now getting patched up. And of course, the other one is COVID. Now, natural immunity isn't an option because the Chinese have, until now, fairly successfully kept COVID out of the population, so no one has natural immunity. And from the vaccine side, the Chinese vaccines don't work. They worked barely against the original wild strain out of Wuhan. And everyone in China has pretty much got that now. But then we had Alpha and Beta and now Omicron, Delta, ThreatCon, Fuchsia 7, or wherever we are now. And they don't work at all. So if China were to open, you're talking about 2 to 5 million deaths a month for at least 6 months. And in a cult of personality system where the buck literally stops with the top guy, that is a regime-ending event. So lockdowns are their only option. We got about 90 million Chinese under hard lockdown right now, and about another 250 million under soft lockdown. You can't run a modern economy like that. The Germans are in recession because of energy. I would say that the Chinese would be in recession because of energy if they weren't in recession already because of COVID. Next crisis. 3 years ago, the Chinese had an outbreak of something called African swine fever. It's basically Ebola for pigs. Doesn't communicate to humans, thank God, but messy. They say they wiped it out. If you look at a heat map of where cases are in East Asia, all of Chinese borders are raging with ASF, but there's not a single case within China. Yeah, right. In an information-controlled system that is a cult of personality that is having a medical crisis and flirting with an energy crisis, one of the few remaining pillars of legitimacy is food supply. The chances that they're going to lose pork again are pretty high. The last time they had to wipe out 2/3 of their herd. All that's left in that situation is rice. Rice is the most phosphate-demanding crop humans grow. China is the world's largest supplier. They've shut their borders to exports. So just on top of everything with Ukraine, we're also have lost one of the largest things that allow us to keep 8 billion people alive. This is the USS Ford. This is our newest supercarrier, most powerful military platform humans have ever built. By itself, one Ford class can take on any but the top 7 air forces in the world. That assumes the Navy fights fair. The Navy never fights fair. The whole idea of the Navy is the ships can move, so you get to choose the time and the place of the conflict, which means it's not really the top 7, it's just the top 3 that a Ford couldn't beat, and one of those is ours. We're building 4 of these to complement our pre-existing 10 Nimitz-class supercarriers. You want to knock off a country, this is the tool for the job. You want to patrol the global sea lanes to make commerce safe. Oh my God, this is a horrible choice because there's only 4 of them. They can only be in 4 places at a time. Instead, you need these bad boys, destroyers. You need hundreds of them, probably 800 to patrol the global sea lanes. We have 70. Even if the United States wanted to be the guarantor of global commerce, we no longer have the capacity. Western Hemisphere, sure, but the rest of the world, forget it. This is a straight up population density map by state and province. The 2 quadrants in the west and the quadrant in the lower right, those 3 quadrants of the world are net exporters of food and energy and minerals. The remaining one, the top right, is a net importer of everything. In fact, you can narrow it down. This circle is a net importer of everything and the rest of the world is a net exporter. The country that is most dependent on the US Navy to keep everything safe and flowing freely is China. Now, people talk about the Chinese having a big Navy, 600 ships. Yes, that is relevant, but only about 60 of them can sail more than 1,000 miles from shore. And that assumes they're going slow and in a straight line to save fuel. In combat conditions, they can only go about 350 miles. At current rates of naval build-out, China will be able to displace the US Navy around the year 2450. I don't want to burn a lot of brain power on worrying about this one. But the Chinese do, and they should. Because everything that's going down in the world today from a security point of view is a direct threat to not just their potential rise, but to their very existence.
I highly recommend you check out this video where famous geopolitical strategist Peter Ziehan reveals how demographics will totally shape the investing landscape for the next several years. Click this video now.